Congressman Tim Ryan, it's an honor to be sitting down with you in your home state. And I also want to just extend a thank you to your family, because I know they're sharing you on the tail end of your holiday before you return to D.C., so we thank them as well. I also just want to pause and say how extraordinarily exciting it is that we have a congressman willing to roll up his sleeves, get dirty, and literally put his money where his mouth is, pun intended. And this book, this is not just a book. This is an incredible book.
Wow.
And there's so much I could say about it, but it crosses demographics, it crosses party lines, and I think one of the most important things that you said in here was that we live in an interconnected world. And I could sit here and speak to you for a week if I was going to delve into everything there. But what I really wanted to focus on today was our children and the legacy that we're leaving them and what we can do about our food system, connecting it to our health, what we can do in our communities and in our schools. And I thank you as a parent and someone who cares about these issues greatly for bringing this to the world.
Thank you. Wow. Well, that's the idea, really, is how do we shift this so that our children can, you know, move into a world when they're our age that is healthy, where they are well, where their health is valued, and really the number one, you know, value that we have is being healthy, because everything else really comes from that. And that's really what I wanted to do with the Real Food Revolution, is to say that this is about getting back to the fundamentals. We have a lot of problems that seem complicated, and many times in Washington we think if we come up with a more complicated, more complex solution, that'll fix the complicated problem. And I really think that's not the right way to think about this. I think the proper way to think about it is, how do we get back to the fundamentals? How do we simplify? How do we just stop and take a deep breath and say, okay, these are all interconnected. And in Washington, you know, we had a huge discussion about healthcare a few years ago, and there was not much discussion about food in that debate at all, and it raged on for how long, and the country's still you know, hopped up about it and still fighting about it, but we never talked about food. And we just had what's called the Farm Bill, in which we promote our agriculture policies for 5 years. We had a huge discussion about the Farm Bill that extended months and months and years, and we never talked about health. Now, how can you have a healthcare discussion and not talk about food? How can you have a food policy discussion and not talk about health? To me, this is trying to say, let's look at this and these two issues as interconnected.
Let's connect the dots.
Right.
Let's connect the dots. I was shocked to realize how the majority of public schools in this country do not cook food.
Yeah.
The kitchens do not cook food.
Yeah. It's microwaved.
Right. We're warming what I say, quote unquote, things up. And we're fortunate to live in the Hudson Valley, where there are a tremendous amount of initiatives. And we're lucky to, much like the Midwest, we have farms, and we have farm to table, and we have grass fed, and a lot of consciousness, but it's still very difficult to implement that into our school system. Right.
I mean, if we're going to shift the culture, you need to teach. You know, it's kind of like no smoking anymore. You know, stop smoking. So there was this campaign. There was bans in schools and in airplanes, and then on, and until we've done a pretty good job of dramatically reducing smoking. I think the same thing has to happen now with food, and that to me starts, a big part of it starts with the schools. And how do you have a garden in every school? How do you have a kitchen in every schoolhouse, and how do you have a salad bar in every school cafeteria? And then you tie that into the curriculum. It'd be very easy to, whether it's math class and chopping up vegetables and learning about fractions,
nutrition,
all of this,
home ec,
all of this, and bring back, and that's what we call in the book is Home Ec 2.0.
You also go into that about bridging that gap between non-organic and organic food, and it shouldn't be a socioeconomic issue. We should all have access to it.
Right. Well, we subsidize it. And so this is really pulling the curtain back in Washington and seeing what's really happening. So we take taxpayer money and we subsidize certain crops,
Right.
corn, wheat, soy, in big numbers. And so if you subsidize something, you get a lot more of it. But those crops maybe aren't inherently bad, but they are the feedstock for the processed foods that are multiple processed. I mean, most food goes through a number of transitions. Dr. Mark Hyman calls them food-like substances.
Right.
You know, we think they're
and that's
food.
being kind,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so we subsidize those crops, and they lead to all this processed food. And then now we have a country in the next few years, half the country's going to have either diabetes or pre-diabetes.
Right.
So then we take taxpayer money and we subsidize through the Medicaid program, the Medicare program, and the Affordable Care Act. We subsidize health care to take care of people who get sick from eating the artificially cheap food. It shouldn't be
Right.
that cheap, but it is getting subsidized. So in a real food revolution, we're saying take that taxpayer money and subsidize crops, fruits, vegetables, nuts, the kind of healthy food that is medicine for our body.
Right.
I mean, that's medicine. Those are the vitamins, those are the minerals, those are the good fats that we need. And so I think the taxpayer, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal, should say, well, we're spending all this money and we're getting really bad health outcomes. We need to make this investment. And I think part of the trick here is, because in Ohio the #1 industry is agriculture. We can't just go up to a farmer in Ohio and say, hey, it'd be nice if you started growing some peaches or some almonds or, something.
Right.
They say, wait a minute, I've got a 30-year mortgage. I've got all this capital investment. I've got 2 kids in college.
And Mother Nature.
And I got to deal with the, whimsical nature of weather today.
Right.
How am I possibly going to be able to do that? So we need to make sure our farmers are secure. And I think that means creating markets for them.
Exactly.
And we've got to create the market. So if we have an initiative in our schools where it's farm to school, and we blow it up, I mean, we make it a big program. If we take universities and incentivize universities to buy local. In Ohio, we have universities, every couple hundred yards, it seems like, there's a university or a community college. How do we create markets for farmers to sell to Ohio State? 60,000 people. 60,000 students. That's a huge market for Central Ohio.
This was really exciting when you brought this point up because, like you said, hospitals, institutions, prisons, schools.
Yeah.
I mean,
millions of people.
Open up the market.
Open up the market.
Right.
And that's why I think, here's the delicate balance between liberals and conservatives. I do think that the government has to initiate this. We don't need to run it, but you do need to provide seed money for the schools to put in a garden, to put in a salad bar, to build a kitchen, to help connect the local farmer to the school. So you may need an employee at the school that can help connect the two so you can go farm to school. That will take some investment.
Right.
But here's the question. In one of the ideas that I propose, you take many school districts, inner city school districts, some rural poor districts, 80, 90, sometimes 100% of the kids in that school are in the Medicaid program.
Right.
And the Medicaid program is for poor, elderly nursing homes. But you have schools in America, many of them, that have these high number of kids that are already in the Medicaid program.
Right.
So we're feeding them crappy food. We know they're going to get diabetes.
Right.
They live in a neighborhood that doesn't have a grocery store for a mile or two. We call them food deserts. Right? So here's a kid in a tough neighborhood, poor, no grocery store anywhere around, no local ag, no urban ag anywhere around, or at least not substantial. They go to a school. They eat Doritos, a pop, a fruit roll-up, and then we want them to learn algebra. So not only they're not going to learn, we know in 10 or 15 years they're probably still going to be on the Medicaid program, and they're going to have diabetes and probably be obese, and now the taxpayer is going to have to take care of it. So why wouldn't we use some of the Medicaid money, because we know we're capturing these kids, and on the front end, use that money to do the local incentives for farmers to tap into the schools, do your gardens, do your kitchen, do your salad bar, And if you want to bend the cost curve in the Medicaid program, that's exactly what you do. And to me, it seems pretty simple, but government doesn't need to get completely out of the way. It needs to reinvent itself and become innovative and figure out ways to do this.
To be proactive.
Be proactive.
To be proactive as opposed to reactive.
Right.
We're coming off the holidays and everybody's been binging on their favorite things.
Guilty.
And I know, guilty as charged, right? You know, some ice cream, some cookies. And, well, that's fine, all in moderation. But you do. I also know how it feels to shop for my family in a store that has high quality food, in a health food store. But let's be real. You cannot feed a family in a health food store unless you've got tremendous funds.
Yeah.
It's expensive, organic food. And unfortunately, the economy is driving our budgets and what we're putting on our plates, and we are paying for it one way or the other.
We pay for it. We pay for it, and we can't sustain it. I mean, that's the thing that I think everybody needs to recognize, and especially your viewers and your readers. We can't sustain this. This is unsustainable for us to continue down this road. I mean, if you take our healthcare system today and then say, okay, in the next decade or so, half the country or 40% of the country is going to have diabetes, like you can't support that healthcare system. We will be spending all of our revenue that comes to the federal government on healthcare. There'll be no money for research and development. There'll be no money for roads and bridges. There'll be no money for alternative energy. There'll be no, there won't be any money left for Pell Grants and all of these things that we need to invest in to be a strong country. So that's why I say we need in some sense, a revolution, at least a revolution in thinking of, if all the soccer moms and all the suburbanites and get partnered with inner city folks, and this is the thing about the inner city that I find so exciting. You can take areas of consumption and turn them into areas of production. So I don't want kids in the inner city or rural, I don't want them just to have a healthy meal. I want them to know how to grow food, potentially sell food. We're knocking down, for an example, in Youngstown, Ohio, we had about 160 or 170,000 people that lived in Youngstown, Ohio in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And then when the steel mills closed, people left. Many in my generation left. And so now we have Youngstown is about 60 or 70,000. So we have all these older homes that we're starting to knock down. Now, if there was a national plan, like we really invested in cleaning up our neighborhoods, putting people to work by knocking down these homes, opening up the green space, and then with some seed money, starting massive urban agricultural programs in the United States. You're talking about investments now in inner cities. You're talking about taking down the crime-infested drug houses, knocking them down, reducing the burden on the safety services in your local community, your police, your fire, that always have to go deal with those situations. Now you have farming in the city. Now you have employment, summer jobs, after school. You're putting these kids to work, keeping them out of trouble, which will further reduce the burden on the prison system and everything else. And they're growing healthy food that they'll then start learning how to sell. So I don't want them to just give them a good meal. Like, I want to teach them how to fish, right?
You want to empower them.
You want to empower them. Here's how you make money. Here's how you start a business. Here's how you grow a crop. And there are people out there that can say, okay, I need 50 families that I need to grow food for in an inner city and feed, and I can make a living for myself. To me, that's like, we have hope for you.
Well, this is how you participate in a revolution.
This is it.
And when I first heard you speak, I knew right away that we had to build an issue of best self around you. And playing off of both your books, A Mindful Nation and The Food Revolution, I think you have inspired a mindful revolution.
If we want to be a strong country, I know that if we want to be a strong country, we've got to have all 313 million people on the field, USA jersey, playing for us. And you can't have millions of kids in schools eating like crap, no energy, no, not peak cognitive functioning of their minds, the inability to focus and concentrate, to set goals and achieve them, to be resilient. We need to start teaching this stuff in a big way in our schools. And that's why I say get back to the fundamentals. I mean, think about it. Attention, concentration, focus. What parent doesn't want that?
Right.
I don't care what technique you use. You can
Right.
use mindfulness. You can use.
Right.
I don't care. It doesn't matter.
We're medicating our children, though. We medicate.
Right. So then we drug them up.
Right.
Right. And sedate them and take away that fire.
Right.
And that they have inside of them. Good healthy food.
Right.
Teaching them how to grow, grow, and cook good healthy food. What is good healthy food? That cultivate awareness. In the military they call it situational awareness, but these are other techniques that can help cultivate awareness. So I know what you're going through.
Right.
I know what my friends are going through, but I also know what I'm going through.
Right.
I can turn the magnifying glass inside, and you have that interior strength of awareness of yourself. So that's real empowerment there. I know about me, I know about you, I'm concerned about you, I'm healthy, I'm vibrant, I'm eating good food, I'm thinking clearly, I'm focused, I have goals, I have all this exciting stuff happening around me, whether it's in the inner city with the urban gardening or additive manufacturing, 3D printers in schools. I mean, there's so much out there that we could do 5 shows on. But to me, it's about creating this new culture in and so that everyone can be on the field competing and nobody is left behind.
So just going back to this whole thing about how it is going to take a certain amount of investment, we aren't really connecting the dots about how much it's already costing us, and how much does it cost to feel like crap? How much does it cost to feel sick?
You see a real negativity towards politics right now. Because there aren't any ideas that are exciting and that people see.
There's one right
here. This is what we're
There's
trying.
There's a big one right here.
To provide ideas that are real solutions, not some baloney that's on a 30-second TV ad, but things that are going to shift the country at a deep level and improve your life, improve your kids' life, improve your kids' health, improve your kids' prospects for learning and going out into the world and being successful. Like, our job as policymakers are, how do you create policies that are going to improve your life? This is not theoretical. This is like, I want to improve your life. I want to improve your kid's life. Now, what can I do as a policymaker? And I wrote 2 books. This is like what I think we should do. And my hope is that, in both of those books, in A Mindful Nation and Real Food Revolution, as you said in the opening, neither of them are political. I'm not bashing Republicans. I think there's, on both sides, we are, I feel like the Republicans want to dismantle everything, and the Democrats are defending the status quo. And we can't have either of that. We need some of what the government does. It's the way we organize ourselves, and we make strategic investments in our priorities. Healthcare for seniors, Medicare, who's against that? But do it in a way that's going to keep people healthy, so when they go into the Medicare program, it's not bankrupting the country. And I think there's room for this discussion, and so I think there's a negativity now towards politics because they don't see any new ideas. And I think the candidate that goes out there with the idea of, we're going to change the conversation. Okay, we're going to talk about food. We're going to talk about focus,
which affects us all.
It affects us all, and how to remove some of the stress from our lives, and how can government be a part of the solution to that. I think that candidate that does that, and again, when we're talking about the food in the inner city, we're talking about growing business people, empowering people to start their own business, and to, like we said, learn how to fish instead of being given a fish. And the candidate that comes in and does that is going to be someone that's really, I think, going to excite the country. And whether it happens in the next 5 years or the next 20 years, it's hard to tell. But I think to me, that's the direction we need to go in.
Well, you also said something that made me laugh. You said everybody wants to be one with the universe. They need to be one with DC. And we all need to do our part. And obviously it starts in our homes and then in our schools and our communities, and it sort of trickles out, and we can we can lead by example. But it would be really lovely to believe that government could come together and to become our advocates, to become the advocate of the whole. I don't care about the party lines, because as you said, food issues and health, it's not a party issue, it's an us issue.
The main issue is what's it really costing us?
Right.
That's the question.
Exactly.
What is it really costing us?
Right.
Oh my God, you're going to raise food prices by this. And here's the problem, and it gets back to the interconnected piece. The school district doesn't care about the Medicaid costs. Like,
They're out
not
of
that
that
they don't
equation.
care,
Right,
but
exactly.
it's not in their budget.
Right.
It's not in their realm of, I gotta, here's my beans, and here's what I can spend, and here's what I can't.
Right.
They don't factor that in. That's why I think it's important for state, federal officials. We've got to be the one to create incentives to connect the
Right.
dots there.
Right.
And at the end of the day, like I said, we're not going to be able to afford money for education if the Medicaid and Medicare programs are eating up all of the revenue that we need in the federal government. There's not going to be money for education to begin with. You think times are tough now. You think budget cuts are tough now. Wait 10 years. When the federal government's Title I program doesn't have any money to give to schools because the Medicaid program has kids primarily, who have diabetes.
Yeah, we've got to stop that train.
Yeah,
it's like it's on its way out of the station.
And this is where we've got to provide, I think, revenue now
Right.
to shift the system
Right.
and to reorient the system and to create those incentives for local farmers, because it's going to take time for them.
Right.
A farmer this year is going to say, okay, I'm going to do farm to school for 10 schools in Trumbull County, Ohio. So I need, I don't know, 5 acres, 10 acres, 20 acres of my 1,000-acre farm. Well, I'll do that this year. We'll make a deal. Federal government say I'll make sure I get paid. I don't want to lose money on this. I got enough risks to deal with.
Right.
Next year, 20 schools. Next year, 30. So that farmer is going to need time to build that out, and we're going to need to protect their investment and make sure that they can, we may have to grant them money for running a different kind of crop.
But we're going to we're taking the money out of paying for people being sick and putting it back into
Right.
keeping them healthy.
Right.
And that, if we can just change that perception,
Right.
if we can start shifting that perception, I mean, that's again, being
Yeah.
proactive.
So you get local farmer benefits.
Right.
Local school benefits. Kids are healthier, so you save money in the long run. Kids' academic prospects will inevitably go up because
Right.
they're healthier.
Right.
These kids, they don't get bad grades, or they don't eat bad food because they get bad grades. They get bad grades because they eat bad
Right.
food. You can't eat you can't eat a fruit roll-up and Doritos and a pop for breakfast for your entire childhood and eat crap at lunch.
Right.
And then for us to sit there and expect you're going to do well on an algebra test, or you're going to be able to
Or go out
read.
and play sports afterwards.
Yeah, have the energy to go
Right.
out and play sports. And it's common sense. I mean, we're not talking. This is not.
Right.
Right. I'm a Irish Italian football quarterback from Northeast
Chicken
Ohio.
wing, ice cream
I
loving.
like chicken wings. I cheer for the Cleveland Browns. I cheer for Ohio State. I mean, I watch football games. I'm not like some
Right.
fanatic.
Right.
I'm someone who's looked at. I consider myself a fairly intelligent person, and after looking at the system as it is for 12 years in Congress and 2 years in the Ohio Senate, I think I know how to fix this now, and I'm going to write about it and see if people think. But it's just common sense. We can't expect
Right.
that kid to do well in
Right.
school. And then you see our numbers with international math and science testing. We're like 24th and 30th.
I know, ridiculous.
That's not good for our
It's not acceptable.
competitiveness.
No.
So if you're a business person who, I would say any business person that would sit in my seat and look at this, you go, this is insane.
Right.
I would never run my business like this.
Right. What if there was some sort of reciprocal program? What if the food company that gets awarded the contract has some responsibility to put a salad bar into the school, or to put a garden into the school, or to be held accountable to a certain level of quality. There are all kinds of initiatives.
I think that's important. What you're doing in your school district and the ideas you have. I think what's important, and I talk about this in the book. What can you do locally?
Right.
Like, we need this to be an organic movement, no pun intended, but it needs to be from the bottom up. And we need to have all of these ideas. We need to have states experimenting with helping grow this industry, helping grow these ideas and connecting the dots. We need local school districts doing it. We need local counties doing it. We need local cities doing it. And then we can look around and say, that works, that's got some challenges. Good idea, but it didn't quite pan out. You know, we need, you know, initially the states were the laboratories of democracy for our country. And I think we need to get back to that. What are the doctors telling us to eat? I did a whole section in there. Like, what are the doctors telling us to eat?
Oh, I love the way how you said, well, they're giving us medicine. They're not necessarily telling us what to eat.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. When, you know,
you were talking about what,
food,
how much they study nutrition in med school.
Hardly
that
any.
Was shocking.
Yeah, hardly any nutrition classes. Most schools don't meet. There's a national standard. I think it's 24 hours of nutrition education in medical schools. Most schools aren't even meeting that standard. So if docs are learning how to help people eat well, what to eat, how to grow, how to cook, and all of these things, really hands-on. And they're also, you come in to see me and I'm a doctor and you have attention deficit disorder or high blood pressure, and I say, well, before I put you on a medication, let me show you this mindfulness-based stress reduction technique. We should reimburse the doctor to teach it, but I think I can keep you off your meds. Try it for 2 weeks, come back, we'll do your high blood pressure, we'll do your vitals, we'll see where you are.
I was so pleased that you debunked this theory of fast food being cheaper. Because again, we go back to you're going to pay for it one way or the other.
Right.
But if you actually do the math now, it's not cheaper. It's not cheaper, it's not healthier, it's not real. And one of the things that I loved about the Real Food Revolution is that it was the family garden, of the family meal, of the stories you share of your grandparents.
I'd be writing and crying.
I can imagine. There is something in this book for everyone, and to at least plant a seed.
Yeah.
Because again, plant it, it'll grow.
Yeah. Politics drives us crazy, but you got to wrap your arms around it, and you got to be in the process, because if not, we're going to keep going down the same road we're going, because the people who are donating the money and not paying attention are leading us down this road. And if you're aware and understand this, you need to be involved in helping us do this, because we can't change course and hope that, you know, a farmer's market pops up here or there.
Right.
It's got to be a structural change that comes from state, local, and federal policies.
Right.
And your viewers need to be a part of the solution.
We have got to get this momentum going.
Right.
We have got to be the change we want to see.
Exactly.
In the world, in our garden, you know, on our plates.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what you've really brought to the forefront. I did want to ask you, I loved the transparency in the book as well, when you were talking about how you're actively lobbied every day.
Oh yeah.
And you also called out the Congress for blocking transparency. Right. And the powerful corporate sponsors.
Right.
And you know, that's disingenuous when you feel that, you know, who's representing who here.
Yeah.
And so thank you for, you know, for...
Well, that's politics.
Right.
You know, politics is conflict. And, you know, it's not, you're not on your yoga mat.
Right.
You know, you're on your yoga mat or you practice some contemplative technique to prepare yourself for the world that you're going to go live in the rest of the day. You know,
be your best self.
we're not going to go to a cave and not come back. I mean, we're in the game. We're in the field of action here. And so you use those techniques, whether it's working out or yoga or meditation or whatever the case may be, to tune yourself up and experience things in a different way. So yeah, there's going to be conflict. How are we going to handle it? And
we have to come to the table if we want to be a part of the conversation.
You got to be at the table, like they say in D.C. You know, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Right.
The Republicans say, well, let's just cut the spending for those programs. Well, now someone on Medicare is going to have less money to get the health care that they need. Well, that's one way of doing it. And Democrats are like, don't cut anything. Okay, so I'm trying to provide a third way here for how we can do this. little politics 2.0 kind of thing. How do we reduce costs by addressing the real issue? This is like functional medicine for
right.
for the body
yeah,
politic.
Exactly.
Right? What's the
right.
real problem?
Right.
And sickness is the fundamental problem.
Right.
So how do we address the sickness? What's causing the sickness? Well, the food is causing the sickness. Okay. How do we fix the food problem? So that the Republicans can get their savings and reduce government expenditures. Democrats can preserve the programs that have lifted many, many people out of poverty and protected seniors when they get older and they can't work. So we can maintain those programs, but make them better and more efficient and reduce the cost by addressing the real issue. And I hope that there are enough Americans out there to say, I hope
this makes
that makes
sense.
sense.
This makes
That
sense.
makes sense.
And I want to join this
And I
conversation.
want to be a part, and you know
Right.
what? I'm willing to get involved now. I'm willing to
Right.
register to vote and try to get a salad bar in my kid's school,
Right.
or talk to the school board members, or run one of our friends for school board. It doesn't take a lot of people to win campaigns. It takes a lot of grit, you know, and you've got to embrace that and roll with it. And you may have to get your hands dirty a little bit,
Right.
you know.
I'm just going to quote you one of my favorite quotes from the book. Let's figure out how to have advances in technology that help us create something much more inspiring than the latest nifty app. A new agriculture system that feeds us fresh, healthy food without damaging our environment. And I thought, from your mouth to God's ears, let ag research become the new Silicon Valley.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one other quote I loved, real food is not about agriculture and nutrition. It's about a way of life that connects back to the earth, to each other, to our communities, and to what really matters. It's about slowing down and really tasting life. It's about the joy of living.
Yeah.
And that sums it all up. I hope that every single person that is listening to this, that sees it on Facebook or goes out and gets this book, because this is a keeper. It's a resource. And again, I want to end on a positive note, as you ended in the book. There are a lot of great, exciting things going on, and you're at the forefront of that. And people are beginning to really listen. And again, I want to extend tremendous gratitude to you for stepping forward, for making sometimes unpopular choices and decisions on behalf of us and on behalf of what you really believe in. And that is at the core and the essence of what a mindful revolution is. And it's an honor to meet you. And I would drive through rain, snow, sleet, and hail to get here again.
Thank you.
To be in Ohio. And
well, we're building an army, and
we've enlisted.
You're hired. Thanks.
Thank you.